What if it rained food? What if Earth was a cube? What if we had 9 lives? What if bits could fly? It's absurd. If money grew on trees, if we didn't have knees, if we walked through life slightly magnetical, it's absurd. Absurd Hypotheticals.
Hello everybody and welcome to Absurd Hypotheticals, the show where we overthink dumb questions so you don't have to. I'm your host Marcus Lehner, and I'm joined here today by Chris Yee and Ben Storms. Say hi, guys.
Hey, I'm Chris.
Hey, I'm Ben.
I think we're going to take this show and switch it into a show about home improvement, because I think we're onto something here.
We're going to hire Tim Allen.
Yeah, welcome to Tool
Yes,
Time.
is he?
There you go.
Tim Allen's still around, right? Is he still doing things?
He has his own. He has Last Man Standing.
Oh, yeah, that show.
Is that a building show?
No. No, it's like a sitcom.
He works at like an outdoor store, something like that. My dad watches it.
What's the last man standing imply? Is he the last man of like small
He has
brick and mortar
3
businesses
daughters.
that are?
He's the only man in the family. He has 3 daughters.
I don't know if it counts if you're the last man standing if you have 3 daughters.
Well, that's part of the joke.
Okay.
I didn't say it was a good joke.
But that
It is a
is
Tim Allen
the
show.
joke, yeah.
that is the Tim Allen shtick. But yeah, so our question for this week is, what if hammers were the only tool? Get rid of all the other tools. So just to be a little more specific, what we mean here is hand tools. So anything that you kind of just like hold in your hand to do something with.
Like a screwdriver.
Yeah, like a screwdriver or
Pliers.
A
Yeah,
saw.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. Hand tools. You guys get it. We are not taking away nails. I think anything that you fasten something with that stays in place is a fastener and not a hand tool. So you can use nails. So you have nails. And I think that's about as well as we defined it before we just went ahead and all did our
Yeah,
answers.
we talked back and forth a bit about, like, is a jackhammer a hammer? And I think, do we all agree on that one?
Yeah, absolutely fucking not.
Yeah, it's not. It says hammer. not a hammer.
Technically, it's called a hammer, but like it's more of a chisel.
Yeah.
Kind of like if someone was like, hey, can you pass me that hammer? And you hand them the thing that, you're trying to ask about. And if they say, what the fuck is this? This isn't a hammer. Then, yeah, like if someone asked me for a hammer and I handed them a jackhammer, they'd be like, what are you doing?
Right.
The definition doesn't really fit my answer, but okay.
Well, close enough.
All right, well, we'll just accept that your hammers are going to be a little different.
We didn't really, hammer this down before we started, so.
Wow, that is a great cue to keep going on with the episode.
Yep. Also, the expression is nail this down, I just realized. You know what? Fuck it. Just roll. We're good.
Hammer this down is still a phrase.
Is it?
It's probably...
You hammer things out. You nail them down. I combined the two.
Jesus.
Hammer it down makes more sense to me than hammer it out. What does that
Does
mean?
it? Hammering it out is like if you're like blacksmithing and you're like hammering out a piece of metal.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Or like your car gets dented and you just like tap it from behind to fix
Right,
it.
yeah.
Anyhow,
Point being, you can do things with hammers, as we established.
so I'm going to start. What I like to do with some of these questions where, there's this weird thing that's going to impact society a bunch, but you don't know, it's hard to grasp how right away, is kind of look at yourself, at your daily life. So let's imagine you kind of just wake up in the morning and go about your daily routine. So you wake up, you get out of bed, you go shower, you get dressed, and so far you actually haven't really run into anything problematic, which is much better than we usually do by this point in the hypothetical. But obviously we're not out of the woods yet, because you got to go back to the bathroom, because there's one thing that you haven't done yet, and it's brush your teeth. And I will absolutely say a toothbrush is a hand tool.
I agree with that statement.
That's fair, yeah.
So this is kind of where I hit my first big hurdle where, how the fuck are you going to brush your teeth?
I mean, it still
Because-
works. It's not going to work as well, but you can make it work.
Does it?
So basically, I have a couple options here. So number one I have is just scrape your teeth with a hammer. And yeah, you can do it, but it's just, one, it's going to be awful. This is not going to be fun for your mouth.
No.
Like, it might not actually be painful, but that scraping sound is going to be just, ugh.
I don't think 9 out of 10 dentists recommend that one.
Well, they might now.
Okay, well, fair. All right.
Number two I have written down here is just a lot of mouthwash. Like, you just chug the shit and just like swish it back and forth for like the 2 minutes that dentists recommend you brush and hope that that's enough.
Does floss count as a hand tool?
I think it does.
Okay.
I think like the roll of floss isn't, but like once you take it out, and have it, wrapped around your fingers, I consider that a hand tool.
Definitely the ones where it's like a plastic thing. I forget what they're called, but
the disposable flosses, the floss picker. But there's one like oral care thing I don't consider a hand tool, which is those water picks. So some of them are just handheld; those are hand tools. But the one I have is like a container that sits on on your sink, and then it's got a little tube, and then has a handheld component. But I think because it's connected, I'd now consider it a device instead of a hand tool.
I'd agree with that.
This is where the definition of tool becomes a little
hazy,
It
amorphous. Yeah,
becomes easy and clear, Chris, not confusing at all. So I think what you have to do is get one of those fancy water picks, which I'll say I actually enjoy it a lot. I never flossed before, and now I got this, and I floss all the time. So real life tip: get one of these things if you're bad at flossing, because they're fun and they shoot water in your mouth, and it's not as terrible as that sounds. So now, you've gotten freshened up, and now it's time for breakfast. And oh boy, are you going to miss your kitchen gadgets. So I tried to keep things as simple as possible because there's already plenty of problems with it. So let's just do breakfast. Let's take some scrambled eggs. You get your egg, crap out a bowl. You get a bowl. You crack the egg into the bowl. And first thing is you gotta stir your egg up.
Should be pretty simple with the hammer, I think.
Yeah, so you can do it with like the probably the back end of the hammer was probably the better side to do it with, just like the handle. And you can get it stirred up. It's not a really big problem, but it's already kind of annoying. I don't think it's gonna be much less efficient than like either like a fork or a whisk or whatever you guys use. What do you guys use to scramble up your eggs?
I use a fork.
I usually use a whisk, but sometimes I'm lazy and do a fork.
I feel like I never have a whisk small enough to like do an egg.
I bought a set of 3 differently sized whisks, and one is nice and small. It's maybe like 1.5 inches across at the top. It's perfect for.
Oh.
I do not own a whisk.
See, we are on very different ends of the cooking spectrum, Chris.
Have you ever upgraded your amount of utensils that you have, Chris, from when we were in college together?
I have multiple forks now.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but me and Chris lived together for like half a summer in college. And what happened was I used to live with another friend who had a fully stocked like kitchen. Like he had all the kitchen stuff for college because he cooked a lot and would like to invite people over, all that. And so when I moved in with him, I'm like, oh shit, I don't need to buy anything. So I went in for that half summer with Chris and I had nothing, like literally nothing for the kitchen. I had the intent to kind of buy them, but that kind of went out the window because it was literally like 2 months, like not even like a significant stretch of time. And so I was like, oh, I'll just use whatever Chris has. And so it turns out Chris had 1 fork, 1 knife, 1 spoon, 1 plate, 1 bowl, and 1 bowl plate. One bowl plate. And so it didn't seem worth it for me to go out and buy because if I bought everything, I'd have to get all the different pieces. So I'd probably be spending like $150 on like just utensils and dishware. So it would be like, oh, Chris, are you done with dinner? I'll clean the fork.
I did buy a set. So I have like a set of plates and a set of bowls now.
Okay.
It's not a lot, but it's more than one.
That helps.
That would have been much preferable to literally just one of each. But anyway, back to our hypothetical here.
I would have multiple hammers.
Yeah, at least 3 hammers. So you got your egg stirred up, not a big problem.
And yeah, I guess fried eggs are right out at this point, right? That's just not going to work, Rhea. Can you flip an egg?
Yeah, that's kind of what we're getting to. Is just like you got the eggs in the pan, and again, you can kind of stir the eggs in the pan, but you gotta have to, scraping them off the bottom is going to be tough. And 2, the back of the hammer is like probably pretty good for scraping, but it's just going to destroy your pans. Like holy crap!
I mean, chefs do that flip thing with the pan, right?
Well, you have to spatula it first with the egg. I mean, you can kind of toss. You can toss. There's
scrambled eggs. Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
You go scrambled eggs. Well, no, you kind of have to scrape a scrambled egg.
I mean, you just get like a non-stick pan, right?
Well, that's how you. Well, but that's how you get like the nice large curls of eggs. Sorry, I make scrambled eggs a lot. Anyway. Yeah,
I mean, also this is this is our hypothetical. I'm using scrambled eggs as like literally this is the easiest thing you could possibly goddamn do, and it's already getting annoying.
Yeah.
If you want to do like poached eggs with like fucking hollandaise sauce, you're gonna have way more problems. So you got your egg in the pan. You can kind of mix it around. You're gonna probably go through pans just beating them up with the hammers. It's gonna be a less civilized world for sure. And then let's say you just want an English muffin on the side. Here's where I think you're actually fucked, because how are you gonna cut your English muffin in half? So they have what they call a hatchet hammer, where the back half of the hammer is not not the nail prior. It's just like turns into like a hand axe if you turn the hammer around. But I mean, if you've ever cut an English muffin, you know that's not going to be a tenable solution to get it open in what looks like an English muffin. You know, it's not going to be nicely cut in half there.
Fun thing. Did you know you're actually not supposed to cut English muffins with a knife?
If you tell me to tear it apart with my hands?
You're not tearing it apart with your hands. When you have an English muffin, what you want is like the sort of ridges in it, because it's all like airy in the middle. If you cut it with an English muffin or cut it with a knife, those flatten out. So what you're supposed to do is take a fork and like poke that in all the way through and then like twist it open.
I think what we're learning this episode is that Ben needs to start a cooking show.
Hi, I cook a lot. I made some excellent chicken parm for my wife and I last night.
For Valentine's Day? At the time of this recording?
Yes.
You
First
dated
off,
this recording.
Marcus, thank you for dating this recording.
You made chicken parm?
Okay, hold on.
I mean, I like chicken parm. It just doesn't scream,
so
romance.
Chicken parm was the first meal I ever cooked for her back when we started dating. So it was kind of a nice little, throwback to that.
So are you going to ride that every year so you can get away with making chicken parm for Valentine's Day?
Yeah, I make good-ass chicken parm. I'm down for this.
It's so meaningful.
Man.
It was the first thing I cooked for you.
It was delicious. It was very good. I made the sauce from scratch. It's very good.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, fine. It's chicken parm. I'm not going to argue that chicken parm isn't delicious. One of my favorite meals.
You haven't had my chicken parm, man. It's very good.
It's not that chicken parm isn't good, Ben. It's that it's chicken fucking parmesan and it's goddamn Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's red, like a heart. And the cheese is oozy, like a heart? I don't know. The metaphor's falling apart here.
I mean, we made, like, panko-crusted salmon with...
Wait, okay, hold on. Chicken parm is panko-crusted chicken.
Yeah, I don't really see the distinction there.
Well, one is not bathed in marinara sauce.
Right, that's a flaw in your meal.
When the Jedi say that lightsabers are a tool for more civilized age, the age that they're currently in that's not civilized is covered in marinara sauce.
Yeah, I want to live in that age. That sounds delicious.
All right. You're wrong.
Anyway, point being,
make like a fish or like a nice roast or something next year, Ben.
Point being, you could totally split an English muffin with like the backside of a claw hammer.
I mean, maybe it's the trick is too with that is that the back of the claw hammers, that's the one that's just like a single point in the back, right?
That's sort of your standard like nail pulley hammer where it has the curve.
Oh, the nail pulley hammer?
Yeah.
They're not really that. They're pretty thick though at the end, aren't they?
I think you squish the English muffin before any of this happens.
So going ahead of my answer slightly.
Focusing.
Sorry, I keep interrupting. I keep prematurely cutting our stupid rants short so that we can continue with the episode, which may or may not be good podcasting. I don't know. It feels like it's a positive improvement.
Yeah, you're right. You continue.
I'm just kind of making the point that the thing with the hammer is that you can get away with most things. It's just all going to be very messy and annoying, which really culminates in now you've made your breakfast. You've got your chunks of English muffin and your eggs with potential pan shards in it, and now it's time to eat. How are you gonna eat your eggs, guys? You need a utensil.
Claw hammer. Boom. Done.
It's again not great.
You hit your plate to create a catapult effect into your mouth.
Now, when I said things were just gonna be okay but not civilized, this is exactly what I'm talking about.
I think you put your scrambled eggs in a mug and pour them into your mouth.
Oh boy, yeah, we're living that living the high life now. Yeah, and again, like I looked at, it's not like I didn't try to solve these problems, because I generally don't like when I'm like, hey, look at all these problems, everything sucks, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I went on to GarageToolAdvisor.com, and I have this list of 40 different types of hammers and their uses. And there's basically like mallets and hammers, and sometimes they got different bits on the back, and none of them are useful for eating. And what I can tell you is I can guarantee that this list is a full comprehensive list of hammers, because about 3/4 of the way down the list, right when they're trying to get to their 40th hammer or so, they put a nail gun in, which I think we can all say is definitely not a hammer.
Well, okay, hold on.
It achieves the same goal.
To be fair, under your previous definition, if someone asked for a hammer, well, I guess it depends on what they need it for. Half the time they'd be like, okay, yeah, this does work.
Let me read their description for the uses for the nail gun. Nail gun. While not technically a hammer.
Okay, so you got me there.
So if the list of 40 hammers has to resort to putting a nail gun on it, I have to assume that the other 39 hammers were all the ones they wanted to put on first, and they just needed one more to get to 40 for their clickbait title.
It's better than that one article that I found that said 101 uses for a hammer, and then they only list 9.
Was there a next page?
There's no next page. And the subtitle of the article is like, we really only list 9, but there's a lot more.
Yeah, but you could expand these 9 into subcategories if you so chose, and maybe get to 101. We'll let you play along at home with your hammer. All right, so you've shoveled or drank or otherwise navigated the scrambled eggs into your mouth. So you've successfully ate breakfast, and now you're off to work. You don't run into too many problems. Like, nothing really interferes with driving. You can just go and drive your car to work, and you get to work, which is at the hospital, because your job in this hypothetical is you're a surgeon.
Uh-oh.
But before we get to the very obvious problem that is your whole job, the first thing that's going to happen when you walk in is the nurse going to hand you some paper or prescription or some crap to sign. And here's another problem. The pen I consider a pen a hand tool, guys.
Well, this wouldn't be our writing system if hammers were the only tool, right? We wouldn't use, paper wouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, so again, there are solutions, but none of them are great. So you could use a hammer with a pointed back, like a rock hammer, and kind of chisel out letters, like if you have a soft wood maybe, and kind of just chisel out the letters, which is going to take goddamn forever. I was thinking you could have nails with little letters embedded on the heads, and you could just be bop, 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 bop.
You're just like a human typewriter.
Yeah, you're like a human typewriter, and you have a little belt with all the different letters, and that way you could do that. And I guess you could then just you don't need even that many, because you hammer something out, and then you just pull up your nails again and put them back. But again, realistically, and I think Chris was kind of hinting at this already, is we'd probably just end up going digital, where I wouldn't consider an iPad a hand tool, or even really a phone. I don't think a phone is a hand tool.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's a tool that you would use in your hand, but it just, in my head, it's just not. If someone is this a hand tool and show me a picture of phone, I'd be like, no, it's not. So let's move on to the surgeries here. Surgery as a whole is what you might call hand tool based. And as far as I can tell, not being a medical expert and not knowing all the different little corner cases, there's really only 2 basic surgeries that are going to be left on the operating table. One of them being amputations. And while that one's going to be unpleasant, and I don't think there's actually that many times where amputation is useful, even if we run out of all the other surgeries that we can use. So you can do those. They're going to be messy. These are not going to be fun amputations because our means of doing them has now turned into, well, I'm just going to give it a good whack with my, axe hammer here.
At least we have the axe hammer. It's not a blunt edge that we're doing it with.
Yeah, we have the hatchet hammer, but it's like I don't know how much force you have to put in a hatchet hammer to get through a leg, because it's probably a lot. Because if you ever tried to hatchet something with a small axe, and it's just you swing it pretty hard and you leave barely a dent in the thing you're trying to break, and you're like, wow, I am weak, or I should have really committed more there.
The surgeons are going to be jacked.
Oh yes, well, amputation surgeons anyway. You just go to the lumberjacks and pick the best 5 get to go on to med school. And the other one, kind of along the same logic of the water pick, I wouldn't consider laparoscopic tools to be hand tools. So these are the ones. Laparoscopic surgery is when they make a small incision and then they put in this very long tool, it's kind of almost looks like a water spray hose type thing. And at the end of the tools, they'll have little attachments that'll be little snippers or grabbers or clampers or whatever. And the idea is that they can make a small incision, even decently far away from what they're trying to fix. And they kind of just go into your tummy or whatever. And then with cameras on the laparoscopic instruments, they can see it without opening you up and gutting you like a fish. So because they connect to and they're part of a bigger system, I'm going to put them in the category of the water pick and say you can still do these kinds of surgeries. And when you do these, really the tools you need for the surgery are all these laparoscopic tools. So you're really not running into too many problems. But there is one little bit that you still have to do, is you still have to make that initial incision. And I think making like a small little incision is still going to be a little tricky. Because again, you don't have a knife, and you have your hatchet tool hammer, but like, how sharp is that really going to be? So I think just like the way surgery starts is like, they put you under, and the surgeon kind of sheepishly like pulls out his little like hatchet and just goes like, whack! And hopes that it's not too bad.
It's pretty uncontrolled.
Yeah, surgery is really only if you absolutely need it thing now.
I mean, it kind of is that already.
Well,
your
yeah,
odds are just way worse.
Fair.
And just a little sidebar, because that's pretty much what I got. But a little sidebar, when I was looking for the world's smallest hammer, because I was kind of seeing like, well, hammers are big and clunky, so you might need small ones to do like, finicky work. And I found an interesting article that has to deal with medicine, but not much else of a hypothetical, about the world's smallest hammer. So the researchers at the University of California in Santa Barbara have developed they call it a hammer, on a microscopic scale. So basically what they're using it for is they're using it to test brain cells after traumatic injury. And so basically it works with magnets, so basically magic, and it's like one cell big, the hammer, and they'll like kind of like catch a cell and then like hit it with this tiny little hammer. And then they're using this to study like, injuries related to like concussions and things, to see how the cells repair themselves.
It's a reflex test for your brain.
Yeah, except if the reflex test goal was to damage your knees.
Well, yeah.
That said, the reflex test will not change.
That's right.
That one will be just fine.
That one is A-okay.
And I think with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Ben.
Yeah, so I wanted to look into something sort of, maybe not the first thing you'd think of, because obviously there's a lot of ramifications like Marcus brought up, but I was kind of wondering, what is doing just kind of a project like? Because that's where you'd use a lot of the more traditional hand tools. So like, just like a woodworking project. So what I decided to look at was building a birdhouse. That's a nice, simple project.
Nice classic project.
Exactly. Pretty easy.
A kid can do it.
Yeah, a little first woodworking project. So really, the first thing you have to do is get some wood. And if you were actually doing this, you just go to Home Depot or whatever and buy some wood. But that wood still has to come from somewhere. So in a world of all hammers, how do you cut down a tree? There's apparently a quote about this that I found, which is, you can cut down a tree with a hammer, but it takes about 30 days. If you trade that hammer for an axe, you can cut it down in about 30 minutes. I think the idea is that it's like, use the right tools for the job.
Yeah, work hard, not smart.
Yeah.
Work smart, not hard.
Yep.
Work hard, not smart. That's what we say here in Hammerco. Hammerco's tree business.
You aren't smart, apparently.
Yeah. You don't want to be a smarty.
Right. So I took that expression, and 30 days is 43,200 minutes, and by that math, a hammer is 1,440 times slower than an axe. So that's going to, hold us back a little bit, but I don't want that to be our only source on how long it's going to take and everything.
Because that's a scientific number.
Because that's not a scientific number at all. So for much more science, there's a video game called Project Zomboid, which is a zombie survival game, where apparently you can cut down trees with either axes or hammers.
No, Ben. Before you go any further, you did start that sentence with, to be a bit more scientific, and then immediately jump to, in this video game, you can cut down a tree.
So, okay. Well, fair. I'll give you that one.
I would say that's less scientific.
I will. So, to be fair, this is something where someone actually decided how strong a tree is and how strong a hammer is, instead of just pulling two very different numbers out of their ass. So it is, at least, I would argue, vaguely more scientific.
How would you rate a person who has designed a video game, Zomboids? I assume this is an indie title that he probably worked on long hours by himself. Mm-hmm. What do you think their experience with trees is?
I think that the creator might be Swedish, so it might be more likely.
Oh, wow. Never mind. I take it back.
Let me actually confirm that one before I commit to that. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, UK. I think they're British, actually. I can't tell how that helps me.
I don't think it helps you.
So Okay, wait, hold on. Three from the UK, but 1 from Canada.
Canada helps a little bit.
Canada helps a little bit.
Canada does do a little bit. Fine. Continue.
All right.
You have the green light.
Slightly
Yeah.
more scientific now.
Slightly more scientific. So in this game, you can, cut down trees to get wood to make stuff. And it takes 5 hits to take a tree down with an axe, and somewhere between 141 and 175 hits with a hammer. So it's like 30-ish times slower, which feels like an underestimation. I feel like it's going to take more than, well, I don't know. I guess if that 30 minutes is accurate, which I don't know that it actually is, but yeah, it could be reasonable at least, I guess, but definitely slower. So how would you actually do this? So technically, as Marcus kind of brought up, there are, what we think of as axes that are technically hammers because they do have like a blunt end. So like if you think of like a fireman's axe, that's technically like a hammer, quote unquote. I'm going to say you can't use that because that feels like it's against the spirit of the idea.
Because we call it an axe.
Because we call it an
instead of a
axe,
hammer.
right?
Yeah, and there's on my list of the comprehensive list of 40 different types of hammer, there's like one hatchet hammer, and it's not very big. It's like imagine a hammer and the back is just flattened sideways, so it's like a 2-inch blade.
Yeah. I was seeing, there were some where it was like mauls, which were kind of like, it's like a sledgehammer size, but one end is like an axe end they use for like spraying wood.
Yeah.
And I was seeing those referred to as hammers, which felt like cheating to me. So, how do you what's the process of cutting down a tree? It's basically just, you have to get wood out of the tree until it falls over. So can you just remove wood with a claw hammer? Yes. The one thing I could find of people quote unquote cutting down trees with hammers was just videos of pretty much always kids for some reason, which seemed very unsafe to me, just taking claw hammers and slamming them into trees to strip wood out of it. Which, parents, don't let your kids do that because that feels very unsafe.
Even if the tree doesn't fall on them, just the wood spraying around.
Exactly. There's also one video where it was 2 kids next to each other at one tree doing it, and I was like, what are you doing? This seems really bad.
Yeah, kids do dumb things.
Yeah, kids do dumb things.
There's also one problem with letting inexperienced people cut down a tree, and is that when you're cutting into the tree, you make that little wedge because it's going to fall over. But I don't know about you guys, but I'm never sure if the tree falls away or towards the wedge.
I believe it falls towards the wedge. That's the idea.
See, that's my inclination too, but I think it's the opposite.
Yeah, when I imagine it in my head, it's the opposite, but when I actually think about it, that's what I think.
So I think you make the wedge and then cut in from the other side, and then it falls, because the cut is bigger on the wedge side, it falls that way. But I'm actually not sure about that
Yeah, I guess
now.
you wedge it on both sides.
Yeah. Anyway, point being, you could do this with a claw hammer. It would just take you a very long time. So you eventually have a tree down. How do you make it into boards? So in the real world, use a sawmill, which is basically a motorized saw on a moving frame that you put the log down, and then it goes across horizontally to make boards. And it can go vertically too to flatten them on the sides as well. Obviously, I guess technically you could still use a sawmill.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue that's a hand tool.
Yeah, it's not really a hand tool, so you could do that. I wanted to see if you could do it with hammers.
Yeah, no, I'm interested to see what your plan is to do it with a hammer.
Is it a hammer mill?
So actually, that was the first question is a hammer, what's a hammer mill? Is that anything? Yes, it actually is.
What if we fill a factory with hammers? Is this anything?
Well, no, I just want to know, you can have a standalone sawmill. Can you have a hammer mill? Is that a thing? And it actually is. It's like a grinder. It's, you put some material in it, and then it hits it with a bunch of tiny hammers as it passes through and grinds it up. Does not help us here, but it's kind of cool. So, hey, the more you know and everything. Hammer mill is a thing. So if you're going to make boards with hammers, you're basically going to have to split your logs, which you can do with hammers. You get your hammer, chunk it down in, and, maybe hit it with another hammer to break the log apart. And then just split it again, and then just scrape it down with another hammer. So there are brick hammers, which you use for masonry work, which have a chisel on one end. But I figure, yeah, you got your brick hammer in one hand, have the chisel side down on the board, and a nice rubber mallet on the other hand, and just scrape away until you got a nice flat board, hopefully, kind of. And now you have to sort of, measure out your planned birdhouse pieces. So I think you want that nice classic birdhouse shape. That's kind of it's like the house you draw when you're a kid, with it's like a a pentagon with like the square and the triangle on top, you know, that sort of look.
Pentagon.
Yeah, not a regular pentagon, but it is a pentagon. It has 5 sides.
I can't picture it.
Okay, so you have a square. You put a triangle on top of that. That's literally it.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was imagining the base, not the front.
Oh, no. Yeah, sorry. The full shape. Yeah. So obviously, a ruler is definitely a hand tool. Marcus brought up the idea that pens are hand tools. I would go either way on that one, but
Did you use pens?
No, I figured you just, you would use your hammer as a straight edge to you'd lay your hammer down and draw out your sides with the side of the hammer. And then like for the angles, you would find hammers with different angles on the like the front and back to like make your regular angles.
Oh, we're gonna make a hammer shaped birdhouse.
Pretty much. It's gonna be also roughly hammer size because that's the only way you can measure things, because rulers are obviously hand tools. Measuring with your hammer is actually a thing that apparently like electricians specifically do a lot, because with like when you're putting in electrical outlets, it doesn't matter how high up they are as long as they're all consistent. So they'll just like put their hammer on the wall and then put it on top of that.
Imagine in this world, all the hammers will be standardized. So like all the length will be a standard, and then like all the angles will be standard, so you can use the angles.
I feel like we got to use existing hammers, because once you go down that rabbit hole, now you're inventing.
I mean, you do
hammers.
have hammers with different lengths of handle for different uses, and you do have like based on the what like back the hammer has. Like a sledgehammer will have an even like 90-degree angle on it. Some of like the more like chisel-y ones will have like an obtuse angle, so it can be more effective there. So you have some options.
The thing is, you're gonna lose some of your. It's gonna be like a ratchet set where you're gonna lose some of the measurement of hammers that you need, and all you're gonna be able to find are your stupid metric hammers that are like close, close but not quite.
So annoying. But if you're gonna tell me that I can't use a pen, I'm gonna have to improvise a little bit.
I mean, you can also just softly score wood to measure and things. Like it's not for building, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. So you can use the chisel end of the hammer and score it in. It'll be fine. So it's not bad. To cut it, chisel end again. The chisel end hammer is actually very useful in this world. Does a lot for you. So yeah, you have your lines, chisel in, knock your pieces out. Got a nice little entry hole in there, same way, You could also, if you're feeling adventurous, just like hammer through an entry hole, but that seems dangerous.
Yeah, no, that's not going to work out for you.
Yeah, no. I guess if you scored it really well, you know what? Let's not go down that road. Now, we did mention sanding it, which you are going to want to sand your birdhouse, for aesthetics and the comfort of the birds. I don't know. You probably don't actually have to sand it, but we're going to go down that road anyway. Sandpaper, we decided, is a hand tool. But really, you just need something abrasive that you rub on it. So you can put like sand or like apparently walnut shells, like ground walnut shells, and rub it with a cloth.
I've heard of that. It's still weird to me, though.
Yeah. I found on Amazon you can buy a 4-pound box of ground walnut shells for $20.
Interesting. What is it better than sand?
I don't know.
Is it cheaper than walnuts?
Yes. Have you ever bought walnuts? Hell yeah, it is.
Oh my god, yes.
You have to assemble it. This part actually is pretty much the same. You just need glue and nails. Glue is not a hand tool. That's an adhesive. And nails we're good at. That's really what we're, designed for in this world. And then finally, last little thing you need, you should make a little perch on the front, for the bird to sit on or, get in more easily. Apparently, you're actually not supposed to put perches on birdhouses. Most birds don't need them to get in, and it makes it easier for like a predator to get in or like harass the bird from like outside. So apparently, ideally, you don't put perches on birdhouses, but they look nice, and versus a classic birdhouse.
Well, the point of the perch is not that the bird is better off, is that you can see the fucking bird that lives there, because he's like, oh, I'm just gonna hang out on my perch.
Well, yeah. So we're gonna put one on. There's a lot of things you can do with it. You can, use a dowel, like a wooden dowel. We're not gonna do that because that seems impossible. Making a dowel. People put like golf tees or like I saw like a maple syrup tap used as a perch, but that's a really easy option. It's a nail, so you're just going to hammer that right in. And hey, you got a birdhouse. That wasn't that bad. It took you several days to cut down your tree, but that was kind of the worst part.
Once the tree was down, it went pretty fast.
Yeah, not too bad. So, actually much more possible than I really thought. So,
What about painting it?
So apparently, I actually did not have this in my notes, but I did see it. It's actually, once again, bad to paint birdhouses because they stand out against the trees and the birds get freaked out by them and don't want to live there because it's very obvious. So it's better to just use natural wood.
Good to know.
This is an educational episode of the podcast.
That could explain why like when we at the upstate house, or it's a bit more rural, my dad likes to build a birdhouse, and all the birdhouses he built, like the birds never moved in.
What color are they?
Brightly colored, because we would have, he would have to, us kids would paint them. But the first time, for God knows what reason, he built a bat house.
Bat house.
Where, it's a birdhouse for bats, and he put that on the side of the house. That one worked immediately. There's plenty of bats.
I've been trying to convince my wife that once we actually have a house, to allow me to, if we're in an area with bats, make a bat house, because it's super good to have bats around.
So I understand they eat bugs and they're good to have, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, the problem with bats is that they're untrustworthy.
Were you hurt by a bat?
No, but, like, I've been near bats, and when you have a bat flying overhead, because they're not that high, they could be, in theory, kind of at person level.
Yeah.
Even though they echolocate real good, you don't trust them to fly and not bump into things. Like, they're blind as a bat, even though they're not actually blind, and the echolocation works great, and they're just fine because they can find tiny little bugs in the air.
Yep.
And they're not going to bump into you, but they flap around kind of like haphazardly, and it looks like they're going to bump into you.
All I know is that I like bats more than I like bugs, so I want some bats around. Anyway, that's my answer. We got kind of on a tangent there.
We got a lot of tangents this episode.
Well, yeah. Chris, what'd you do?
So I looked at hammers as weapons.
Nice.
Yay.
It's the friendly. Ben's building a nice birdhouse. I'm saving people's lives. And Chris, like, what do we hit people with? I got a hammer. Everyone looks like a nail.
Yep.
Well, it's because when we brought up this hammer question, like, the first thing that popped into my mind was Old Boy, the movie Old Boy, where he fights people off with hammers. So I wanted to go down that route.
I've never heard of this movie.
You've never heard of any movie. It's it's a foreign movie, but it's still pretty famous.
Is it, Ben?
Which movie? Sorry, I was checking my phone. I'm bad at this.
Old Boy.
Oh, Old Boy, yeah. Old Boy's great.
See?
All right.
Oh, wait, hold on. So, did you watch Daredevil?
I did not.
Nah.
Damn it.
Never
Okay.
heard of it.
Well, wait. What? God, no.
That was a joke.
Stop. Anyway, there's a fight scene in Daredevil that's like 100% inspired by a particular... I think the fight scene you're about to talk about in Old Boy, Chris.
I'm not really going to talk about it, but
Oh, well,
I just
anyway.
mentioned it.
Okay. Well, regardless.
But that's sort of what inspired my answer this time. So I wanted to look at hammers as weapons, and to do that, I went like further back in history to see when hammers were like actually used as weapons in warfare. So war hammers emerged in the 14th century, and they started to gain popularity in the 15th and 16th century. And they were mainly a reaction to the development of curved plate armor, because curved plate armor was, once they got harder and harder, they were better at protecting against swords and other sharp weapons because they provided like a glancing surface. So if a sword hit it, it would just like ricochet off. So as a reaction to that, concussive weapons became more popular. Now in Western Europe, the development of warhammers, well, obviously there's the blunt end, which is designed to like dent strong armor.
The hammer, if you will.
The hammer part. And then a lot of hammers later on, they started to develop a pick on the side, on the back. And that was designed more to pierce softer parts of armor. And it was also designed so you could like hook on to enemies or like hook onto their shield if you wanted to, or like pull people off of their horses.
Multi-purpose.
Yeah, it's very much like a regular hammer, where the front bit is very good at the one thing that it's generally known for doing, and then the back bit's actually the secret helpful part.
Right.
And then eventually they added like a spike to the end of the shaft so they could like stab people. So that's not like a normal hammer.
That would make woodworking very exciting.
Yeah. And over time, the length of the shaft actually grew bigger and bigger just because it provided more swinging power, because bigger arc. So it's just a more powerful weapon. And these hammers were mainly used by like heavily armored knights. That's because they're big and heavy. They're kind of slow, so you need to be heavily armored. But by late 15th and 16th century, the advancements of other weapons like the pike and the poleaxe, as well as the warhammer, kind of made heavy armor less effective. And because obviously armor slows you down, they started to favor more like speed and agility. So by the early 17th century, they kind of just abandoned heavy armor altogether. And a big contributor to that was that like muskets started to get introduced, but like they weren't very accurate at all. So the chances of getting hit by a musket were pretty low. So they felt kind of safe to just like abandon their heavy armor.
Mm-hmm.
So that was Western Europe. Now in Eastern Europe, particularly like around Poland, that area, they also had warhammers, but they more heavily favored lighter armor. Lighter armor was like more common than just like heavily armored knights. And warhammers were mainly used as a secondary weapon for light infantry. They were called like Polish hussars, were like a specific type of fighter. So these hussars, they're lighter and they're more agile. So like their armor never weighed more than like 30 pounds. It was pretty light. And in the 16th and 17th century, these hussars, they thrive. They're like way bigger than any heavily armored knights. But eventually, like the introduction of gunpowder kind of phased out the use of warhammers for them too, because like musketeers replaced them. And
see, that's like I said, that's the power creep ruins these games, because they had this really cool, rock paper scissors balance going of like, now warhammers are good, but you can be like lighter or heavier and you can balance things out. And then they just like came out with the powerful musket, and now everyone's like, well shit, now we're just shooting each other.
So that was like a common trend in history, is like they favor speed and agility, and then eventually the gunpowder is introduced and guns phased out hammers. But in our world, because I'm considering guns a tool, our definition of tool is kind of different, I guess. Because I think maybe Marcus might not consider a gun a hand tool, but I'm considering it a hand tool.
I would consider a gun a hand tool.
Okay, so I guess we're on the same page. So we don't have the introduction of guns anymore in history, but we still have gunpowder. I don't consider gunpowder a tool. I consider that like a material, and you can use that material like with your other tools to enhance them. So if we didn't have guns, but we had gunpowder, how would that affect the advancement of hammers as a weapon? So I started to look into that. I'd searched, I think I just searched gunpowder hammer.
I'm just need to run into a problem where the thing that hits the gunpowder in a gun is generally called the hammer, right?
No. Actually, The first thing I found was like exactly what I was looking for.
What?
Well, that's unexpected.
Yeah.
And not how this research usually goes.
Not usually. So apparently in Mexico, there's a thing called the Exploding Hammer Festival.
Oh my God.
I want to go.
And what they do is they just strap a bunch of like gunpowder to a sledgehammer. They just like tape it on or something. And then they have a hard surface on the ground. In the video I watched, they were using like a steel I-beam. And they just hit the I-beam with the hammer, and it explodes.
This is the coolest fucking thing that I just
so
imagine.
awesome.
Like, my girlfriend would be like, why are you doing this?
Right.
And I wouldn't have an explanation. And I could only say, because it's an exploding hammer. Like, of course you're doing it.
Yeah, it's incredibly dangerous. And like, this is a festival, so like a bunch of people are doing it. It's not like just one person is doing it and everyone else is watching. It's like a whole field of people are doing it. So like, I was watching a video of it, and there's like a vlogger, and you could just hear just random explosions in the background because people are just doing this. And I'm actually going to send you guys a GIF to show you what it's like.
Ooh, a GIF.
Hold on one second.
It's GIF, Marcus.
It'll be here in a jiffy.
Here's a guy with the hammer. He's gonna hit it.
You're giving a play-by-play of a video nobody can see.
But bam!
That's
Oh my
amazing.
God.
That is much
I was
more
wondering
of
about the
explosion than I
blowback.
expected.
Yeah.
The dude literally just like, the hammer just shoots up in the sky and throws him backwards. It's amazing.
Yeah, so this is happening all over the place in this field here. And he has like no protection. He's not wearing anything. He kind of just...
He's got a hat on.
He's got a hat on.
baseball cap.
It's not a hard
but
hat. It's, yeah. And it like sends the hammer flying into the air, which is incredibly dangerous because this is
there's a lot of
sledgehammer.
people exactly in the range of where that hammer might end up.
Yeah. So this exists.
Wait, if you are holding the hammer tight enough, can you fly? Because it looks like he tries to hold on to it. for as it shoots up into the sky. But if he just held his grip, I wonder if he could have flown with it.
I highly doubt it. So if guns didn't exist, I think this would be like the natural progression of where weapons go. People would just start strapping, because this is like, gunpowder is obviously a very valuable tool, and this is like one of the only ways you can use it in the context of hammers.
Do you end up with a Lord of the Rings type thing where you have the guy with the nuclear warhead strapped to the front of his hammer as he charges into the middle of the city, like the torch bearing guy in Helm's Deep, yeah, in Lord of the Rings. He just like runs and just hits like the fountain or whatever, and just like, here we go.
That's a big possibility, and this technique will be very useful, especially while like soldiers are still wearing metal armor, because you have a hard surface to hit. And then I wanted to look at like how else could you use gunpowder. Now, like history has shown that they favor speed and agility, so I wanted to see if you could use gunpowder as a propellant. So like if you propel the hammer with the gunpowder to make it able so you can swing faster.
Are you reinventing a hammer gun?
Hammer gun. Is that a thing?
I mean, if you use gunpowder to propel things, say a bullet, replace bullet with hammer.
I don't know if that would work. I did
Have
not do that.
Have you accidentally reinvented a hammer gun?
I did not do that, but you could do that, I guess.
Okay, what's your thing then?
So once, obviously, gunpowder is propellant, but there are like other, like the technology for propellants develops further, and we get like rocket power things. So I started looking into like rocket propelled hammers, and this is a fictional, like in a bunch of fictional things, this is a thing. So
it's not a thing?
It's not a real life thing. It's a fictional thing. It's an existing fictional thing. So in the video game Fallout 4, there's the super sledge. In Overwatch, also a video game, Reinhardt's hammer is called the rocket hammer, and it just has a rocket on the back. And then in the movie Alita Battle Angel, they don't have a rocket hammer, they have a rocket pick. It's the same basic principle though. Just big weapon with a rocket that propels it so you can swing faster. Now, I wanted to see if this is actually possible in real life. So I looked up some videos. There are some people doing some pretty stupid things out there. And there I found a video of these guys. They got a replica of Reinhardt's hammer from Overwatch. And they basically just put a bunch of rockets on the back because they wanted to test if it was real. They had the same curiosity as me. So the replica of their hammer is actually still pretty big and like heavy. So they're actually kind of able to make it work. They basically had to, like, they didn't swing it normally. Like they had to lift it up and then let it drop. But when they let it drop, they still propelled it, and it still increased the impact force like significantly and the speed significantly, so it had some impact.
Interesting. So like you could actually, so my thought on the rocket hammer is if you'll get propulsion, but the rate of propulsion won't match how fast a hammer would swing, and you won't really get that much. But I guess if they're hitting results, I'm not going to argue with YouTube. I
mean, it's not like a normal swing, I guess, just because the hammer is so heavy. So it's really just like increasing the effect of gravity on the example that I had.
Oh, so me and my physics brain was probably correct.
But I think if you did have a smaller hammer, it would still, like, it would kind of work, I think. I didn't have any examples of a smaller hammer, but...
I thought instead of saying a smaller hammer, they're going to say, if you had a smaller physics brain, I wouldn't have to defend myself.
So that was a big, heavy sledgehammer. But I imagine if we shrink the hammer down to... It doesn't have to be like the normal size hammer that you imagine when you say hammer, because I think that's probably too small for a rocket. But somewhere in between, you can get a hammer in between there. They have hammers that are not heavy and not super light, and they put a rocket on there, and you can put a trigger on the handle, and you can, like, when you swing, you can pull the trigger and you'd be like, make it swing super fast, and it'll be pretty cool. So that's rocket powered hammers. And that's like gunpowder and rocket propulsion. Now, I want to look at like the next technology introduced after that made like a big impact on things is electricity. So I want to see how electricity would affect the development of warhammers if like hammers was the main tool that we were using. And the first thing that came to mind was Homer Simpson's electric hammer, which is not very useful at all, but it's a funny image where he just has like a self-swinging hammer. Obviously not very useful. But instead of electric hammer, I wanted to see, what about an electrified hammer? So I found a video, another video of a guy doing something pretty stupid. That was a running theme in my answer.
I could tell.
So in preparation for Thor Ragnarok, that's when he released the video, he wanted to build a replica of the Mjolnir, or aka Thor's hammer, and he wanted to electrify it. So he by electrify, he put a 300 volt capacitor inside the head of the hammer. He basically had like a hollow casing as a replica for the hammer. And they put a 300 volt capacitor inside it, and then he like hooked it up so that he can charge it up and like touch things with it and send shock waves through it. Mm-hmm. So
right.
A human can handle about up to like 50 volts before it gets dangerous. So obviously 300 volts is very dangerous. The downside is that you do have to charge it, but it's deadly.
It can do damage.
And the upside is that you don't need a hard surface like the gunpowder. And it's not going to have the big blowback effect on the user that the gunpowder will. So it's more controlled than the gunpowder. So I think eventually that's what the advancement of warhammers is going to be. They're going to have like electric shock hammers, and that will be pretty effective. I did look a little bit into long-ranged hammers because all we have right now is just close range. And like throwing hammers is an option, but I didn't really think it was that effective. Marcus mentioned hammer guns, which I guess could be a thing. I don't know how well that would work because I feel like the hammer is not a good projectile shape.
No, it is not.
What if you just like plug the barrel of the gun with the handle and have like the hammer head sticking out of the front, and then it fires and launches out?
I guess maybe
that's your best option, but still not great.
I also consider that not within our rules anymore because I think that's a gun, not a hammer.
Well, that's fair.
Yep. Recoil also becomes a concern.
This is also true.
Because the recoil from something that weighs almost nothing, like a bullet, compared to, I don't know, a hammer, is going to be a little different.
Well, they're rocket launchers.
Although I do like the image of just like, you have these super high-tech, like, sci-fi fantasy electro hammers that people are charging down a hill with. But there's no ranged weapons, so people are just like throwing regular ass hammers at them until they start attacking with their electro hammers.
I mean, that's basically what's gonna happen. That's my vision of the modern day hammer soldier. So you're gonna have a medium-sized hammer. They're gonna be rocket propelled. They're gonna be electrified. Maybe some of them will use the gunpowder as well, just to mix it up. Because why not throw some explosions in there? And then the ammunition, instead of bullets, it'll be like battery packs for the electric charge, or like whatever propellant they're using. Or if they're using gunpowder, then gunpowder will be the ammunition. And then I think armor will probably be like rubber armor, I guess, to resist against the shock. And it also resists against gunpowder hammers too, because it doesn't provide like a hard surface for them to hit. So it's useful for both. So I think rubber armor will be a big thing. And that's my modern day vision of a soldier with hammers.
I do need to back you up for 1 second on the electric hammer.
Yep.
Just a second. As someone who does have a degree in electrical engineering, I need to back you up on the voltage thing.
Okay.
You don't actually care about voltage, you care about amperage. Voltage is actually not lethal. It's just like the difference in electric potential.
For example, like a outlet in your house is 110 volts in it. And you can touch that and obviously be just fine.
Google lied to me.
Yep. What you care about is amperage, which is the amount of, for lack of a better word, amount of electricity per second. So I just want to get out in front of that before people send in angry letters.
Yeah. It's a good thing we have an electrical engineer on here.
More voltage is worse for you, though, right? Like, you need amperage too, but more voltage is worse for you.
Yeah, well, so that will make it... I'm trying to remember exactly how it works. Basically, because I haven't dealt with this in a long time, higher voltage will make it like... That will make it like arc. So actually, you probably want...
So it adds range to it.
Well, but it'll arc to you, most likely. So
I
you
imagine
probably
the rest of the hammer will be made of rubber, except for the electrified part.
At a certain point, it'll still like arc through air if it's high enough voltage, though. So I think what you want is actually lower voltage, higher amperage. Anyway, point being, before people get angry and say that electricity, blah blah, whatever.
The video that I watched only focused on the voltage for some reason. I don't know why, but so that's why.
Probably because he had shit amperage and didn't want to admit it.
Yeah.
Also, it's also very easy to be like, "Whoa, this thing is such high voltage; it's going to be so murderous."
Exactly.
And it's like,
yeah. When actually, if it's like low amperage, it's actually not dangerous at all.
You didn't have an arcing issue in the video, so 300 volts works. I don't know what amperage he would need or what amperage he's looking for, but you could get there.
Yeah, I'd assume he kept his amperage low so he didn't like kill himself with it accidentally.
Yeah. I mean, he used it on a piece of metal and it left like scorch marks on the metal. So
interesting.
It looked pretty powerful to me.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah,
right.
we're not saying it can't be dangerous. We just want
want to get
clarify.
in front of the science.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's good.
That's been spinning in Ben's brain for the entire time of your answer, and he's seething his ears are turning red and steam's coming out of him.
It has.
Okay, Chris, are you ready?
I am ready.
Would you rather wear mops on your feet or sponges on your hands?
So this is a spring cleaning question.
Yeah, it is spring cleaning time right now. Well, not at the time of this recording. We've already admitted that. But at the time of release, it is spring cleaning time.
Yeah, it's
Everybody
like it's
get
literal
your,
like 10 degrees outside right now for us. But when this comes out,
this is the time of year where you have to go and change your cat litter. And then, damn, I couldn't think of any other like.
That's the only.
Is that the only way you clean?
No, yeah, I'm trying to think of things that you should probably do more than once a year. But yeah, I'm gonna pretend they're annual. I've
replace your towels.
Yeah, replace your kitchen towel.
Let's see. So mop on your feet or sponge on your hands. Does it have to be strapped to like the front of your hand?
Yes.
Can you still pick things up is what I'm getting at.
There is no question in my mind that it has to be on the front of your hand.
I think it's front of your hands, but I mean you could still pick things up awkwardly because you could squish a sponge.
Okay. And the mop thing, I assume, is on. It's not like on your shoes. It's on your actual feet.
Oh God, no shoes! They're like strapped to your feet, not like.
Oh, okay. So you can wear shoes.
But then you put the mop over the shoes. Then they're the bottom is surfaced, whether you're wearing shoes or not.
I don't really see a downside to having the mop on your feet.
Falling and dying is the downside.
I mean, it's a little slipperier, I guess, but like you don't lose that much functionality.
It's a lot slipperier.
I mean, once it gets dirtier, you'll get some friction.
I don't know. I think it's, and I'm assuming that they're just going to be wet because it's a mop, and mops are generally wet.
So they're just constantly wet. They don't dry up ever.
Yeah, it's just they're constantly wet. They're magically always damp.
Same with the sponges.
Yeah. Let's say yes. They're both always wet.
That makes the sponges even worse.
They're wet and a little soapy.
So I think the wetness makes both of them a little worse, but I think it makes the hands worse than the feet. I'm still.
I think the hands are untenable at that point.
So here's the thing: if your feet are the thing that is wet and soapy, you can't go anywhere without making everything wet.
I mean, that's true for you touch a lot of things with your hands.
You do, but you can like if I go visit somebody's house, I could avoid touching pretty much everything.
You can just walk around with like a fishbowl and keep your hands in it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'd be sopping.
They're not gonna be dripping,
I don't think they'd be dripping.
Be like damp.
All right, fair.
But if you walk with the mop shoes, you're gonna leave probably a significant amount of water behind. With the sponges, you could get away with it. Like it would be annoying. Like you could still do other things like grab shit with your elbows or the back of your hands or something to not make a wet mess.
Could you get really big boots?
So you gotta have the mops on the bottom of the feet. Like whatever.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's not like your bottom of your feet have turned into mops. It's like you just whatever the shoe or foot is, you always have to have like the mop.
Does the mop / sponge get dirty or does it stay clean?
Well, it's always a little soapy and wet, so I think it would get dirty. I think it would get dirty over time.
Okay, so both of them would get gross. I think I would rather have my feet be gross than my hands be gross.
The not being able to go places is the one that's getting me, because you can't go into like an office or get invited to somebody's house anymore.
I feel like if you had dirty sponges in your hands, people wouldn't invite you to their house anyway.
But you could go, like you could go, and it wouldn't be a disaster. Like if you invite someone with their mop shoes and they would come in and you're like, please take off your mops. You're like, I can't. and then they walk once to your living room and like, your whole fucking apartment is like wet and soapy, like you're just kicking them out.
What if you
It's immediate.
only visit people who have tile and hardwood floors, and then it's nice because you mop for them?
Yeah.
Like carpet's obviously bad, but
Wait, can you swap out the mops to make them clean again? Or I guess you can wash them.
You can clean mops.
Because they're gonna, I imagine they're gonna get pretty gross really fast.
yeah.
I mean, I assume they're all cleanable. Like if you go home and you shower, you can kind of like just soak them with fresh, new, good water and new, good soap, and then they would, get
Like they're gonna
better.
get dirty way faster than just a normal shoe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's gonna be gross. Man, I just think okay, maybe it's time for us to decide what we want to do, because I'm gonna go ahead and go on record and say I think not being able to walk anywhere without getting things wet makes you just a public menace. And although I think if it was just you living by yourself in your house, you might prefer the feet as opposed to the hands, I think the impact on others is way worse for the feet. So I'm gonna go with sponge on hands. I would rather sponge on hands.
I think I'd go rather mop on feet, just because I want to be able to use my hands. You can't really, I mean, I guess you can still do stuff with your hands, but you can't do, like, typing would be pretty difficult, and you'd, like, ruin all your keyboards and stuff.
Yeah, there's also not like a touch screen on live that you could use.
Yeah.
Should we establish that your sponge is what is it? Electroconductive.
But have you ever tried to use a touchscreen while your finger is a tiny bit wet?
Yeah, it does not work.
Oh my god, it's the worst.
Does not work. So even if it's capacitive, it doesn't matter.
But, like, mop on your feet, yes, it's it makes things a little weird, but you can still walk, and walking is basically the only function you use with your feet. So it doesn't really hinder you that much. So I'm going to go with mop on feet.
I think I'm also going to go mop on feet. I'm a little worried about like driving too. I feel like having like switch pedals quickly with a slightly soapy mop foot is going to be pretty dangerous.
But, like, you're going to be turning the wheel with your sponge hands. That's also pretty dangerous.
And that's also dangerous. You're right. Yeah,
You can get like a what do they call it, thing that you attach to your steering wheel?
I like the handly thing.
Yeah, the handle.
That would help, but it's still like your hand's gonna slip off sometimes if you do things quickly. I don't know. It feels risky, and yeah, there's just a lot of you have to use your hands a lot for stuff.
Your hands are like a multi-purpose thing. Your feet are not a multi-purpose thing.
Yeah, but I'm just gonna still say the one thing they do is very important.
Well, yeah, but you can still mostly do it.
Just makes it a little harder, tiny bit harder.
Okay, here's hold on. I may have just solved it. You just live in a wheelchair where the bottom of the wheelchair where the feet is just a bucket.
There you go, bucket wheelchair.
Boom, we solved the hypothetical.
So you switched your answer to feet?
Maybe with that. Fuck it. No, I'm gonna stick to my guns. I think based on the hypothetical, if you don't avoid the biggest problem of the wet feet, which is the getting everything wet and tripping and dying, I'd rather have the hands. So I'm sticking to my guns, and that's that. That's my vote.
All right.
If you, our listener, want to vote on our podcast, you're basically shit out of luck. But a contribution to support the show is kind of like a vote. It's kind of like a vote for saying, hey, keep doing this podcast. It's great. I love it. I want to support you. So if you want to give us your $1 vote, you can go to www.patreon.com/absurdhypotheticals and sign up for our Patreon. We have just the one tier at $1. So you get everything, which right now includes a special monthly behind-the-scenes episode where we go over the previous month's questions, how we make the show, what we really thought of each other's answers. And it's kind of a cool, laid-back, less formal kind of hangout. If I could use another word for... if I could also make my noun mean less
Yeah, I feel
formal.
like you do that all the time. Like, every time you do this Patreon pitch, you're like, it's casual, it's laid back. I don't want to say casual again. It's laid back.
Someday I'll learn more words. But in any case, feel free to join us next week where we answer the following question. How would you steal the Mona Lisa?